Great. My name is Daniel Moody. I'm with my son Jonathan Moody, and we are with I Buy Houses HQ LLC based in Tampa. And the reason we made this video is because we get so many questions about probate and about estate properties and all the issues and so forth. So we thought we'd make a real quick video, a resource, something that people could show their family and their friends that is timeless, that they can just use at any point. Because the probate process and liquidating real estate that's in an estate does take time. So we're not in a hurry. We just want to make sure a lot of people's questions get answered. So I've been involved in real estate acquisition, buying and selling since the late 90s. I grew up in Brandon. And how long have you been in real estate?
About 5 years now, I would say.
So you got licensed, was it
2016.
2016?
Yeah, started 2015, got licensed shortly thereafter.
You started doing this right out of high school.
Yeah.
So he's very experienced. How many, didn't you do like way more listings your first year than the average Joe?
Yeah. Well, most realtors, they only do about 2 sales per year typically. So I was thankfully much higher than that.
Yeah, thankfully. So basically we do lots of different things. We can list properties, but primarily we buy them. And that's what this is about. Purchasing inherited property. Now, we found from our experience that there are really about 4 basic things that hinder people from liquidating a real estate. At the top of the list, what would you say is the big barrier right up front?
Right. It's typically just the cash that it takes to get through the process and everything because of the legalities and everything surrounding it. It's usually just the cost. It's very cost prohibitive.
So why does it cost so much in Florida to sell a property that's in an estate?
Well, we have something called probate that's mandatory. So anytime someone passes away, their assets have to be dispersed, their liabilities have to be paid off, and their assets dispersed, typically by the county, by the government, and they need an attorney to do that. And attorneys cost money.
Okay. So an attorney has to be hired by the family or whoever. There obviously are circumstances that trust and different things, but generally speaking, somebody dies, their property goes into an estate where it's liquidated and stuff, and real estate is one of the issues. So how much does an attorney usually cost? I mean, I've seen the prices range, but what's an average?
Yeah, it depends on how many assets are in the estate. Usually around anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000.
Now, let me interrupt you. Just so you know, we have a solution for that, so don't worry. It's not really a barrier, but it's a barrier for most people that don't work with us. So, but you said what, $3,000 to $6,000?
Yeah,
roughly?
typically.
Okay. And how much of that $3,000 to $6,000 is up front? Like all of it?
A good portion, just because you have to put you have court fees, you have to put the attorneys on retainer. They have their filing fees, their paralegals. So pretty much most of that is required to even start the process.
Okay, so we're not even talking about like back taxes. We're talking just for maintaining the property, keeping the electric on. We're just talking about getting the ball rolling.
Yeah, just to be able to have the ability to sell it legally. So before any of that happens, we can't even think about selling it before all that's done.
Okay, now let me interrupt ourselves here because I mentioned it, and I just want to get it off the plate, so to speak. If you're in a position where that's keeping you from getting rid of or rather not getting rid of it, but liquidating or cashing out, selling an estate property, something you've inherited or your family's inherited, don't worry. We have we have a probate attorney that we work with very closely, and we have for at least 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah.
And he will defer all of his fees till closing. So in essence, the house or the property, if it qualifies, and we can work through that process with you, it's not complicated. There's got to be some equity, obviously, but he'll take all of his fees out of closing costs, and that's amazing because usually these probate. What's the average probate? At least how many months?
Anywhere from 4 to 6 months, sometimes up to a year, typically.
Now it can be shorter, but most of the time it's because they have to allow time for creditors to respond and so forth.
Sure, depending on how long it's been in an estate, it could be a couple months, it could be 6 months, it could be longer.
And the longer ones are where we sometimes have double probates. Didn't we do one like that a couple years ago?
Yeah. There was a guy, bless his heart. He had a property down here, needed everything. We saw pictures.
It's one of the old frame houses down at Ybor. It was It was horrible.
Yeah,
it was broken into. Probably we had code enforcement liens on that too, didn't we?
Yeah, there was code enforcement. The front door was pushed open. They took everything of value, trashed everything else, and then it was just sitting there.
And not only was the condition bad, which is another issue because people got to fix stuff and before it's even sellable oftentimes, at least the realtors will tell you that. But his dad was in the estate of his father, and his mom had passed away since his dad passed away. So they ended up having to do double probate, and our attorney didn't take a penny up front. He got paid out of the closing costs when we bought the property. So it worked out really well. In fact, what did he say when you took him his check?
Oh, he was thrilled. He didn't really anticipate, getting paid, anything because of the attorney fees, but also just how simple it was. I went to his property, met with them.
And we don't normally do this, by the way. Normally, it's all escrow, but he was in such poor health, he couldn't come to closing. He was just up in Zephyr Hills, so...
Yeah, the title company said you can just deliver the check, and that's what I did, because he didn't really have much of a mailing address.
And some fried chicken, too.
Yeah, we brought him some food, so he was happy about that.
Yeah, so... we can, as far as the probate costs and stuff, if you've already filed probate, just disregard. But that said, it's a huge deal and a huge barrier to a lot of people. The other issue, of course, is just the time it takes. How many of these houses have we bought with contents? If those people had to go through and liquidate those contents, they'd be there months sometimes.
Yeah, and it's usually not something people like to even bring up early on. Usually it's things like expense and probate and time. But they're just thinking, I can't do anything until I've had a chance to go down there and go through everything and clean it out and sell what I need. And that sometimes those small things are what prohibits a lot of people even taking action. And what we've been able to do is pretty much buy the property with contents, and we're able to either liquidate, either to donate, things, Salvation Army, Goodwill. But occasionally they leave stuff behind that's really important to them. We had some old pictures. We had some old World War II documents. I don't know if you remember that.
I think we found a wedding band.
Yeah. It's a gold wedding band still in the house, and it was.
And this was a family that had come down already, made a quick weekend trip to try and find the valuables, the things that they wanted, because the guy had to be back to work on Monday. It was one of those. He lived up in Georgia, I think, north of Atlanta. So they made a whirlwind trip down here. Got the shotguns out of the attic, a few other odds and ends, and they missed a lot of things. So when we went through the house to help liquidate it, and we work with charities and different things with respect to getting rid of all of that, and they were thrilled when we sent them that. We mailed it up to them. We found all these things. So, but that's a huge deal to a lot of people, and it's not just the matter of the time, the emotional. Sometimes it's really hard emotionally to go through those things. We bought hoarder houses. Can't even get in the front door. Some of them, they were that tough, and nothing surprises us. So if you're out of state or out of area, or you want to deal with like a partial contents, that's not a problem. It's not a barrier at all. Really easy to work with, and happy to help out with that. Complications, like we already talked about, multiple probates. What about like back taxes?
Yeah.
What are some other complications?
You got code enforcement too,
right?
Grass,
long grass,
right.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's family, at least in my experience, because I'm usually the one that's on the phone. I'm usually the one that touches base initially.
Co-heirs.
Yeah. That's
our attorney actually said that, didn't he? We went out to lunch with him one day because we were talking about different things about this issue, and because we've been buying more and more of these, so we wanted to make sure we understood the process and different things. And I asked him, I'm like, what do you think is the most, because to us it's money. It's always about money. I don't have the money to pay for probate. Well, he solved that, but he said really the issue is family. He says the number one issue, where you'll have several heirs, people that are going to inherit, and it becomes a real headache. And ultimately, you got crazy Uncle Mike or crazy Aunt Susan or whoever. Forgive me if you have an Uncle Mike or Aunt Susan. I don't. That's why I use the names. But they literally are just lunatics, or they just think the house is worth so much and we can't sell it for this much. So it just stalls everything. Or you have the family member that's just out of comms, like you can't get a hold of them, you can't reach them, or they just are so disassociated they won't return calls, or they're in jail. There's any number of situations where one family member, their lack of involvement, even if it's just two people, it just stalls the whole process. And there's been many times where we are this buffer between family members. We're like kind of herding cats sometimes, but we are able to create that sort of distance between family members, ease some of the emotional turmoil of having to revisit this sometimes after years. So properties we bought, several of them have been in an estate for 10 years, and it just sits there, and it gets worse and worse year after year. The value gets less, the violations get higher, code violations and the fines, taxes get behind. I mean, and it's a valuable asset that people can, enjoy the fruits of. So why does it sit there? And that's one of the reasons why we made this video. We want people to understand those 4 basic barriers: cash, the time, the clock, if you will, complications with paperwork and all those issues, multiple probates, lawsuits, all of that, co-heirs, family, all of those issues are easily resolved if you have somebody who knows what they're doing, have done it many times, and have helped facilitate that. So we're peacemakers, we're facilitators, and that's what we do when it comes to probate. Now, if you don't have a probate property, like not necessarily probate, but an estate or an inherited property, you just want to sell it to us, that's fine too. We buy houses all over Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas, Hernando.
Yeah.
We've even bought some in Citrus, which is the Orlando area. So that said, we're happy to help. If there's any questions you have, feel free. And don't we have a resource as well?
Yeah. If you put your information there, we'll email you a PDF that kind of outlines some of these things we already talked about, just so you can print it out, review it with the family, or just send it.
And I hate getting junk emails, so don't worry. We're not going to blast you with junk email. You want to buy your house? None of that. Okay, we'll send you probably one email just to touch base, maybe once a month. Sometimes the whole process of liquidating property, whether it's real estate or other assets that are inherited, it takes time. So we're not in a hurry, and we just want to stay in touch. And at any point, if you have any questions, feel free to call us. Our number's below, as well as where you can leave your email, and we'll send you the download with a PDF report covering all more detail than we could ever, reasonably cover in a video like this. So great. It's a pleasure. I hope we get to talk to you and meet you down the road. And if not, I hope this has been helpful. Any last comments?
No, that's it. We
Great.
deal with a lot of these properties. It's just shouldn't take more than 5 minutes, and an obligation. I mean, you're not obligated to sell us the property or even work with us. If you pick up the phone and call,
We'll answer a question.
If we can help you, great. If not, it's okay.
Great. All right. Thanks.